All right, great afternoon, great afternoon. I just had to tell you guys I am so blessed at this moment, because so many things always try to get in the way of what we're trying to do with digesting Black History 365. I have to say, on this particular day, I am so honored to bring on the second episode of Digesting Black History, Dr. Margena A. Christensen. First of all, I want to give you your flowers first and foremost, because as a young kid coming up, always reading the Jet, always reading Ebony, it was just like, it was an inspiration. And I know throughout the years when you first left here from St. Louis and to go to Chicago and to actually sit down with Mr. John H. Johnson. It just really was just mind blowing when I would just spend that $1.45 to go get my jet. And then when I said, okay, now you really want to learn how to read, Marvin? Go get that Ebony. Because see, that jet was a good page turner. So I just do that. And then oh, is that the beauty of the week?
Right. Look at that particular middle page.
page, page 64.
Beauty of the week. Come on, be honest.
I used to sneak to my father's room and take out his Ebony and just look at that particular page.
So I had to tell you that was it. And then I loved everything about those two publications. So what we want to do is bring you on so you can tell us some about yourself, because we want to hear about Dr. Margena A. Christensen, a St. Louisan, graduated from Cardinal Ritter. And I'm telling you, we're so proud of you. So, hey, just give us some hand claps.
Thank you.
I'm gonna have the sounds on here also.
Thank you so very much. I'm honored. It's a privilege and a pleasure to be here, especially when people from where you were born and raised remember, and reach out. And I'm just as proud to represent St. Louis. People always tell me, you can take the St. Louis out of you. No, you can leave St. Louis, but they can always hear my accent. They always say, look, you are true, straight St. Louis, okay? But yeah, Cardinal Ritter is where it all got started. I was a sophomore, actually, when someone, a sister, the late Sister Barbara, reached out to me and said she noticed my talent as a writer. And as a sophomore, she told me about the Minority Journalism Workshop, which was sponsored by the St. Louis Association of Black Journalists. The late George Curry was my mentor, and they took me in as a sophomore. And I'll never forget, I told them I wanted to do entertainment. And I braced myself because they were serious journalists, politics, news, world news, all of that. And when I mentioned entertainment, he embraced it. And he said, if that's what you want to do, I want you to be the best at it. So the very first article I had published and written, he said, find somebody in entertainment you'd like to interview. And the biggest person in St. Louis at the time was the late, great Dr. Jockenstein. And he would rush home just to hear the roll call. He was always with the celebrities. He was a celebrity. I remember reaching out, setting up the interview. I was shaking and trembling. He was my first interview and first published article. I started it with the rap and ended it with the rap. And I
wow.
Article. And I learned so much from him. But it all started in St. Louis, and I never forget where I came from. Never, ever.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I had to tell you that is my cousin, and his daughter is. His daughter is doing great work. But I'm gonna tell you, the first time I really met him was out at Steinberg Skating Rink,
Okay.
And what's so crazy about that is that that was the same weekend, I think that week, that Marvin Gaye was killed.
Oh,
And they had a big thing. No, it was like that week leading up to it because he promoted the concert, and he was supposed to been coming here before he got killed.
okay.
So my cousin Jagerstein had a big promotion thing out of skating, Steinberg skating rink. And the first time I kept telling everybody, man, Jagerstein, my cousin, because my Uncle Ray, my Aunt Barbara's husband, was his first cousin. So I told him that story, and they're like, man, you ain't related to Jockenstein. I said, yes, I am. And then you know how you going back and forth? Yes, I am. No,
Right.
you ain't. Yes, I am. I said, look here, I'm getting ready to walk up to my cousin right now. So they started getting quiet because they thinking like, I don't believe you getting ready to walk up to Jockenstein and say, what's up, cuz? And I
Right.
said, and well, he was on some skates, and I was looking up at him. I said, what's up, cuz? And then he reached down to me, gave me a hug and a handshake and all that. And they were looking at me all crazy. I said, what I tell you? And then I said, now I don't know how to do that rap and none of that, but I just pointed at him and I said, do what you got to do. Because see, at that time I was a photographer.
Okay.
No, I was coming into doing some photography, so I was still a junior in high school.
Okay.
So I didn't have a camera at that time, unfortunately.
Okay.
But yeah, but that's definitely it. That's definitely it. Well, look, I'm gonna go into one of my questions, and this
Okay.
is what I always want to start everybody off with. Who was the first image of Black history that made you feel very appreciative?
Hmm. I wouldn't say necessarily who, but what.
Yeah,
My
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me
You
now?
hear?
You hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, doctor, I can't hear you. Can you hear doctor?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay. Yes, I would say it can you hear me now?
Yes, you good.
Okay. I would say it wasn't necessarily a who, but a what. My mom was a librarian and she would bring home lots of history books. And there was a book, you all might remember it. It was called Great Negroes Past and Present. And it was by Russell L. Adams, Dr. Russell L. Adams. He is an African American chair at Howard University. And this book stood out to me because it might have been like maybe close to 200 profiles of African Americans. And not only were there short narratives, but there were illustrations. And at the time, I loved to draw. So I would look at the drawings and I would sit and draw those pictures. But while I was drawing, I was also reading. So that was my first taste of really learning and loving African American history in that context. It was through that book, Great Negroes Past and Present. Russell L. Adams. I think it came out in 76, somewhere in the 70s. But that book stood out and it's still a book that I believe all people should read and look at because you will learn from sports to politics to medicine, science, entertainment, sports, just you name it. And that was my first introduction.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, I'm going to introduce my co-host. His name is Greg S. Carr, and we're going to let him ask you a question.
Dr. Christian, so what a pleasure to meet you. I just want to know how do you think that covering entertainment news has changed from the time that you've gotten into it to what we're experiencing now?
Ooh, great question. I've found that the entertainment journalism that's taking place now is more or less a follow the leader. Everyone is looking to see what someone else wrote. People don't check facts. They don't even check the spelling of someone's name. They just follow to see what everyone else did or is doing. I came from the school of Ebony and Jet magazine, where we were the leaders. We weren't following the leaders, we were the leaders. And when we heard something happen, we didn't, well, of course, we didn't have social media either. But even if we did, we would not reach out or follow what everyone else was doing. We would go to the source. So what I'm seeing now is that social media, has made everyone feel that they could be a journalist and report entertainment. And then also just a lot of erroneous information. And like I said, I came from a school where we were the leaders. We checked the information. We called the person, hey, we just read that you died. You answered the phone, so we know that's not true. You know, I mean, how many times have you heard, you know, someone died or they're on their deathbed and they're sitting there reading the news with you? So much has happened. And the way that we have to disseminate news has changed tremendously. But I would say the greatest change is that everyone is so in a hurry to be the first one to report it. And they just want to be the first one. They don't care if it's true or not. They just want to be the first. And that's the danger with it, because, you know, you don't know who to believe. And something I would encourage people to stop doing that I see all the time. If CNN hasn't reported it, then it's not true. Look, I need to tell you, as much as people hate TMZ, they usually have their stuff locked and loaded. And they have sources. Harvey Levin is an attorney. You'd be surprised. I would say this: if you're in entertainment, trust no one, because they have just about everybody who's willing to sell you out for $1 and a donut. And TMZ information is true. It's true. I remember when I covered Michael Jackson. And I remember standing in the pool of reporters, and there weren't very many African Americans. I met a guy who worked at TMZ, and this was back when Michael Jackson died. And this gentleman kind of told me how they do things. And I was like, wow. So yeah, their information is true and verified. So don't always wait for CNN. Also, because sometimes there are people in our community who died that other people could care less about. Okay, there's a woman named Angel Lee, and if you saw Richard, the Little Richard story, she was his quote unquote girlfriend. He really adored her. Very statuesque, beautiful woman. She died like maybe 3 weeks ago. No one knew, no one cared, because okay, a lot of people don't even really know who Little Richard is, so they wouldn't know who she was. But I remembered her. And people know that story, but CNN did not and will not pick it up, you know. And so I would just encourage people to dig and find your own treasures, which is what we did with Ebony and Jet magazine. But we have a young group of people reporting now. So, you know, for them, Little Richard, when I saw somebody call Brandy Norwood, the singer, a living legend, I had to clutch my pearls, and I wasn't even wearing it. So I said, if Brandy Norwood is a living legend, I said, I mean, Smokey Robinson and the rest of them, I just don't even know what to call them.
Right. That's something.
He's a legend from the 90s, I guess. So
yes, exactly. So yeah.
Thank you.
I think the thing that's just puzzled me is how they just deflect generations prior to the 90s, you know, 80s,
Yes.
70s, 60s.
Yes.
And then also I had to say it's a shame on the parents, because they stopped being able to read and read to their children, and to be able to have moments like that, because this is what, you know, digesting Black history is really going to be about. You know, it's like getting you to go to your books, the libraries, and then one of my keywords is Google it, because right now you got a phone or you got a library on your hip, in your pocket, in your purse, every single day. It's like when I say, do you know anything about Dr. Christensen, Margena A. Christensen? No, I don't know. I say, well, Google her. Because when you find out who she is, you're going to realize she is a treasure, especially coming from St. Louis. I'm like, wow, come on, stop playing. Let me go to this next question. First, I want to ask, who was your favorite interview? Because I know you said Michael Jackson, but who was your, well, we're going to say, since it's Mother's Day month and everything like that, who was your favorite female interview?
Okay, and I need to correct you. I mentioned covering Michael Jackson's funeral, memorial, and all of that. Um, he was not my favorite interview because I did not interview him. He did approve an article that I wrote once, which was about MTV waiting so long to have African American artists. So that article. But to your question, my favorite female that I interviewed. Wow, that's a great question. Who would I say? Wow, I interviewed so many people who stood out, but who stood out the most as a female? Wow, I'm trying to see. Well, I'm just going to say someone who's behind me, Jennifer Hudson. And I'm going to say that because I did an interview with her. And at the time that I interviewed her, it was a few years after she lost family members. And of course, the publicists were like, don't ask any questions about that. You know, that was a given, you know, and I wasn't going to ask any questions. And we were talking, and it's 6 degrees of separation because she actually had gotten her start in theater in a production with my best friend, Narissa Pearson, who is also from St. Louis and went to Cardinal Ritter. And so Jennifer was like, oh my goodness, I just love Narissa. I love her. And so we were talking, and throughout the interview, she kept saying, you act like her and you talk like her. And she just kept laughing. So we were talking, and then at the time she was still with her fiance, David Otunga. And I said, I can't imagine. He's Harvard trained attorney and he's a wrestler. And so kind of laughed, and I said, they spent all that money for him to be a wrestler. And so she just stopped. And she said, you know, I can't believe I'm about to say this. She said, but him being a wrestler, it saved my life. And I said, you know, I didn't say anything because I learned that you have to just let people talk. And she just kind of talked about how she was supposed to spend the night with her at her family, at her mom's house when that incident happened. But he wanted her to come to Florida because he was training for wrestling. And I hate to disappoint all of our wrestling fans, but yes, wrestling is fake and they have to train. So he was in Florida at a wrestling school. And he said, just come, you know, to visit me. And she did. And she said that doing that changed the course of her life. And she didn't really know how to feel about it, but she shared that. And the fact that I never asked her that question and it just came out. And she told me, she said, I don't read my story. She said, I can't even tell you any article that I've ever read. But for me, the sweetest compliment was that she read the article, and how I knew was that she started following me on social media. And that really touched me because before I did the article and before I wrote it, I actually prayed. And I never told her, but I actually drove to the home of her family and I just sat there and I prayed that when I write the story, it would be able to teach, to touch, and to help someone. And it did do that, and her as well. So she was one of my favorites. And she's also a Virgo. So
them Virgo women.
she's a Virgo. And I also used to teach at Kennedy King College. And she was a student at Kennedy King College for a little while. And she was also their very first. Kennedy King College had its version of American Idol. Of course, she entered the competition and she won. So she was Kennedy King College's first American Idol winner, though she was not a winner for the show nationally. So I have that special connection with J. Hud, Jennifer. Yes.
Yeah, J. Hud. Okay, now this is my next question. Then I'm gonna turn it over and let Greg end it for us because we're coming up on that short little 30 minutes. It go by so fast. So we're gonna do something about that real soon. We'll probably bring you back on so you can give us a part 2. I had to ask you this. How was it? What was your first impression of Mr. John H. Johnson?
Oh, my first impression of Mr. Johnson when I first met him I was flown in from St. Louis for an interview, and I was supposed to do the interview with Linda Johnson Rice, his daughter. And I'm sitting on the 9th floor, the executive suites, and I'm sitting there at the reception area, and he comes walking by. And so I get a little nervous because he might have been about 5'6". It was kind of hard to tell his height because he was extremely bow-legged. So much so that when he walked, he kind of rocked because he was so bow-legged. It was that kind of walk. And so he walked and he said, hello, because he kind of had a high little pitch voice kind of, and said hi. And I was really like in awe. And then I went into the office and went into Linda's office and was interviewed. And I was surprised because he was going into the office because he also interviewed me. So my impression was that I was very nervous. You know, just imagine someone that you read about, that you, you know, a legend, you know, truly, and then this person is the one conducting your interview. And he started asking me questions and grilling me, and with his questions, I remember he was saying, you know, I don't understand. You can work anywhere. You can go work for Essence or Black Enterprise. I don't understand. Why do you want to work for Ebony? Man, I don't understand. So he was kind of giving me a hard time about it. Like, you know, I just, so it made me think, wait a minute. He wouldn't have brought me all the way here just to tell me what I can't do. And I said, okay, he's trying to see what I'm made of. So I'm going to show him because I'm from St. Louis. So I said, Mr. Johnson, if you would, I'd like to show you my portfolio. And at the time, we called them clips. So I had my portfolio with all my clips of my articles. And the Jockenstein article was in there. But I had people I interviewed from St. Louis locally. And I felt like I had reached my pinnacle in St. Louis, that I couldn't go any further. I felt like I interviewed the greatest and the best. And at the time, Bobby Brown was the king of the stage. And I remember showing Mr. Johnson that article, and he said, oh, wow, you really interviewed some big stars. And so I showed him, and he looked, and he was just like, and he laughed at me. He said, I'm telling you, you definitely have fire. Because when I told him, Mr. Johnson, I have done this, and let me show you what I've done, and can I take you to the table? And it was, when I look at it now, I just think to myself, wow. But he laughed and he said, you definitely have fire. And he said, although I wanted to work for Ebony, he said, I think Jet is what's going to work best for you because you'll be able to interview all the stars. He said, well, Ebony is about seniority. So whoever's there the longest interviews the biggest names. He said, but with Jet, I think you'll enjoy it more because you'll be able to talk to a lot more stars. So that's how I ended up at Jet. But as God had it, I ended my career with Ebony. So I ended up doing both.
Wow, now that's beautiful. That is beautiful. I mean, when I think about all the things that you can ask or situations you can fall into, it's like, man, I always respected him to the
Yes.
utmost. And now
Yes.
that he's like my height, that's even better.
Yes. He was so down to earth. There's a truth to the saying that people who have money don't show it. He had probably he had a brown suit, a black suit, a gray suit, and a blue suit. He always wore the blue or the gray or the brown. He had a certain style of shoes that he had maybe 3 pairs of that same style, the same watch. He did not wear his wealth. And he was just so down to earth and could curse like a sailor. He could curse like a sailor. But he had a laugh. It was a high laugh that was almost sounded like a whistle. But he was, you have those moments when you work and you hear someone sharing stories and you're thinking, oh, not another story. Oh, do we have to hear about that story again? And when that person is no longer with you, you say to yourself, wow, you just appreciate, what you were a part of. We didn't watch him write and make and shape history. We helped him to write it. And I worked,
Mhm.
saw him every week, just about every day with Jet Magazine, because with Jet, we worked with him directly. With Ebony, they had to go through Lerone Bennett. We worked directly with
Yeah, Mr. Bennett.
Johnson. And that's something that a lot of people cannot say. And he knew everybody's name. He was one of those people, he wasn't, sometimes some people are untouched, you can't touch them. With him, he touched the people. He knew everybody who worked in that building. And it wasn't just the executives and those who were in the C-suite. He knew people who worked at all levels. And he was just very down to earth. I think about him every day. I miss him, and I feel so blessed to have been someone who was honored to work and shape history with him. Yes.
Oh, that's beautiful. Go ahead, Greg.
All right, Dr. Christian, last question. Why do you think, this is kind of like a part two to Marvin's question, why do you think the legacy of John H. Johnson, Jet, and Ebony has endured even to this day?
I believe that the legacy of the name of the publication is because it's one of those tried, tested, and true names. When you hear Ebony, people, the name just means something, okay? And that's the endurance of it. We know that it's been seismic shifts since 2005 when John H. Johnson died. And there have been various forms and various people in place. But to your question, how it has lasted and endured is because the name means something and the name matters. And the name is usually synonymous and thought to be with excellence and information and education. And there was a time when people had nothing to turn to but Ebony and Jet. Well, we don't have Jet anymore. Ebony is different, like most media outlets, most online, and that's okay. But I would say Ebony's name is like a family member. Sometimes you have family members you stay with forever. Sometimes you have family members that you love from a distance, but they are still family. And that's what I would say about Ebony and the legacy. They are family members. So everything that goes with being a family member, all the highs, all the lows, but in the end, that bond is solid. In the words of Ashford and Simpson, solid as a rock.
All
That's
right,
what this
all
love
right.
is. That's
Well,
right.
look, I
That's
just
right.
ooh, yes,
Yes. It's like a family member.
yes.
On those coffee, we don't have coffee tables anymore, and we don't have magazines to put on the coffee tables anymore. But like I said, they're still family members. That family member that used to do things back in the day that doesn't do those things anymore, but they're still around. It's the same thing. Yes.
Very good.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, look, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up your book. So, in about 2 minutes, just give us a little quick synopsis of the house that John H. Johnson built. Could you just give us a little bit of
Yes. Well, I will show you as well. Okay. So it is Empire, the house that John H. Johnson built. This was actually my second wave. My dissertation was based on John H. Johnson. I introduced him to the academic canyon as an adult educator. So that's what I examined in my actual dissertation, which I completed in 2013. I did a second wave of research to examine John H. Johnson, the man. And that's what I did for the book, which came out in 2018. And I examined how he used his magazines to educate and inform people politically, socially, culturally. So he used his magazines as textbooks, history books. And that was what was stated in my research in 2013 with what he did. Because once again, in examining him as an adult educator, he taught not only the world, but as my research showed, he educated the world about African Americans as well. So not only others learned about us, but we learned about ourselves. And these magazines were tools. And I always would say John H. Johnson was the professor. The university was Johnson Publishing Company. And the magazines, the textbooks were those magazines, those books that you had to read that took you through life. And that's how I examined it. And so my book looks at what he did, his empire, how he was the first in so many regards. He owned a building on Michigan Avenue, first African-American to be named to Forbes magazine's richest 400 in 1982. He had all of these pioneering publishings, magazines, weekly, monthly. He had a book publishing company. The Ebony Fashion Fair, the cosmetics, you name it, he did it. He left no stone unturned. He had the Ebony Jet Showcase. He had a radio station where Tom Joyner got his start. So many people started Johnson Publishing. Andre Leon Talley, he studied under Mrs. Eunice W. Johnson, who was John H. Johnson's wife. He was someone who studied under her with the Ebony Fashion Show, pioneering fashion traveling show. So everything he touched the world, and he left his footprint and he left his impression. He changed not only the lives of African Americans, he changed the life of America by being one of those people to show that Black lives matter, but you have to see that we first exist. And that's what he did, week after week, in your face, Jet Magazine, month after month. That's what you saw, Ebony Magazine. And let's not forget Ebony Man. And let's not forget some of the other publications he had, Black Stars, Ebony South Africa. Like I said, you name it, he touched it. Those tentacles were far and wide reaching, not only in this country, but he even outside of the United States. So that is what he did. And it's a privilege and a pleasure to have worked with such a pioneer, a man who, like I said, changed the world, changed history's mind about who African-American people are. And that begins through education. And that's what I wanted to show through my research in 2013 and the book in 2018.
All right, beautiful. Now, I just want to tell you that you also had almost like the first podcast with Jet, because I believe Tom Joyner was like the host of, he used to interview a lot of people, a lot of stars, a lot of sports stars,
You are
Magic
correct.
Johnson,
Yes.
Michael,
Oh, yes.
Prince.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, Janet. I
Yes.
mean, everybody. When you just sit, that's even talking to you right now. I feel like that big sister that I never had. I can talk to you and sit at your feet and say, "Who is this?" and "How did they react?" and and all that. So I am
Yes.
truly
Yes.
happy, on behalf of me and Greg, and then also our co-host who's not here. Her name is Gwen Moore. We just thank you. We thank you so much, for being on episode number 2 of Digesting Black History 365 podcast. And I have to tell you this. We had to ask you this. Could you just let us know where the book is being sold, so a lot of my our subscribers can go and purchase the book?
Everywhere books are sold. So you can get it at Barnes and Noble. You can get it at Indie Bound. You can go online, Walmart, Target. So any and everywhere books are sold, you will be able to find it. And then you can also go to my website, which is margenachristian.com. But once again, Empire, the house that John H. Johnson built. So of course it's on Amazon, but anywhere you feel comfortable buying a book, that's where you're going to find it, because the book has been distributed through all of those outlets. So it's not just in one place, it's everywhere. And you can get the ebook, you can get a hard copy or a cover, or you can get a paperback. So that's, like I said, any and everywhere books are sold.
Well, I definitely, when you come back home, I want to definitely get me an autograph copy.
Well,
So
thank you so very much.
Greg, and Gwen, we want our autograph copy.
Excuse me. I mean, even though I'm an engineer, I mean, so I don't get my copy. Like, I don't have a camera right now, but I do have a question, Doctor.
Sure,
And
go
this is
ahead.
significant to the times at hand. I raised a
Yeah.
12-year-old son. So how do you think Ebony and even Jet and even other cultural African books will take effect in today when our younger race or our younger generation is not really the ones to read a book? They more, on a high tech. I mean, even on a,
Mhm.
digital phones, they don't
Yes,
read too much. So how
yes.
would this, or how could someone who want to get into the culture of writing in our culture make an impact when we're not reading as much?
And great point. People are not reading as much, but people are reading more. And so there's a difference. While they're not reading as much, they're reading even more. So what are you doing? You're going to make sure that you find chunks, bits of information to provide to people. It's kind of like what Jet Magazine did. It was a small magazine that was packed full of information, and those articles were very short. Well, think of Jet in a digital world where people want to look at an infographic. So people are visual. You can educate if somebody every day had a website and every day had a picture of someone from history and a little bio on that person each and every day, and that constantly rotated. Look at how much you would learn. So people are reading more, just not as much. So to your son and to others, most of them are going online to read. So people have blogs, people have websites, and you can't have 1,000-word article because most people are not going to read more than maybe 200 words. So you want to make it powerful and potent so that when they read it, they're going to leave and remember the person that they read about, or the information that is being produced. So that's what I would suggest. People are reading, kids are reading, everyone's reading. They're going to social media. So educate them through social media. So you can have entertainment and education. It's called edutainment.
I'll tell you, that was a great question. And I'm sorry, Tavon, I didn't want to leave you out, but you told me you was going to be kind of chilling to the side. So, but great question, great question. Well, look,
Excellent.
we are going to let Dr. Christians enjoy the rest of her Sunday, but we thank you so much for giving us your time, your
My pleasure.
knowledge, your
My pleasure.
experiences, because like I said, once again, this is what digesting Black history is all about. And I'm going to tell you another thing too. We are talking about Black history, but positive Black history. And that's what the Ebony and the Jet had all through those pages. It was not too many times that I can pick up that uh, those magazines during my teenage years, because then that's when I can spend my own money. Because
Yes.
you really was spending money when you bought you an Ebony. But I'm gonna tell you what. I messed up a lot of things too, because I had to make sure that I got the Ebony first from my
Okay.
grandmother, because she would get it and take it to work, and
Oh,
sometimes it would be left at work.
oh, okay.
But I always got the Jet though. I always
Okay.
got the
Yes.
Jet.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
thank you
Yes.
again, thank you again, thank you again, and God bless you. And I look forward to. I think we're gonna have to definitely do a part two. What you think, Greg?
Definitely, definitely, because she has so much more to tell us. I think this was just scratching the surface, the tip of the iceberg, man.
Yeah, definitely,
I
definitely.
thank you for having me, and I thank you for what you're doing, because Black History is more than just in February. It is every day, all day. And I appreciate what you're doing, and I wish more people would understand. Don't just relegate us to a month, because we're all day, every day, and there's so much that needs to be learned and told. So this is a step, and it's a wonderful step. And people, back to that question, people don't like to read, but people listen. So
Yep.
You can educate them through podcasts, and people are visual. People don't want to read, but they can listen to what someone has to say. So education is constant, it's nonstop. You just have to find different innovative ways of disseminating the information. And that's what you're doing with this podcast. I appreciate you. I thank you for recognizing and honoring me. I thank you so very much.
Well, you're so welcome, and God bless you. And we will stay tuned to whatever you got coming up next. I know there's another book coming, so
There is another project that I'm excited about. So I look forward to that as well. And I actually did a second book. I co-authored a book with a guy named Wallace Sanford. And the book is, this is called Wally, Where'd You Get Those Glasses? So it's his book, and it deals with his life of how he went from being someone who did security with Prince to actually performing alongside him. And one of his great songs, Wally, was based on this. But his story is fascinating. I call it 6 Degrees of Wally, because everyone who's anyone has worked with Wallace Sanford. He's done security with, so Prince was icing on the cake, but I mean, he has had so many cherries, so much icing with entertainment. I mean, it was a very fascinating story. So it was a pleasure to work with him and to share his story as well. And his book is also found everywhere books are sold. So Wally, where'd you get those glasses? And it talked about his life with Parliament, Pendergrass, and Prince. He worked with Parliament Funkadelic. Dr. Jockenstein was christened by we know who, and Teddy Pendergrass, and then Prince. So that just had a catchy ring to it, but he worked with any and everyone in the industry. So thank you for your support. It's a pleasure to meet each of you. And once again, keep up the great work. What you're doing is so needed now more than ever, because people need to learn and need to know that we are great, we are beautiful, and we matter.
Oh yeah, definitely.
No matter what anyone says, and that any and everything is possible.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And we're going to tune it out, and we're going to say bye-bye.
Bye, bye, bye.
All right. God bless you.
Bless you all too. Have a good one. Take care.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Well, our next guest helped shape the African American narrative. She worked for Johnson Publishing for almost 2 decades, writing and editing for Jet and Ebony. She released a new book called Empire, The House That John H. Johnson Built. Please welcome Margena A. Christian. Hi, Margena.
Hi, Margena.
Well, you were at the forefront of literally shaping the narrative for Black folks in our country, because I remember growing up, coming to Mother Dear's house, and she would have Jet magazines every week, and she read them cover to cover if you wanted to know what was going on in our community.
You had the weekly Jet magazine and you had the monthly Ebony. And these publications were staples in not only African American households, but these publications also educated the world about who we are as a people as well.
Right.
You hear our audience, they're saying, yeah, you can say yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you can applaud that.
Those little jets.
Yes, tell us about your time. We're going to dive into the book because I know Jesse Jackson actually wrote the foreword. How did that come about?
Reverend Jackson wrote the foreword because few people realize, but when he was in divinity school, his first job was at Johnson Publishing Company.
What was it?
And he worked in the mailroom very briefly, and then Mr. Johnson, as we called him, said, "You're too smart, and I want you to do more." So he went out into the community and he sold ads, worked in advertising, and that helped him to realize that he could become a world leader.
Isn't that something? I did not know that. Yes. What was it like for you working under Mr. Johnson and having that kind of communication with him?
It was, when you're living that kind of experience, you don't always realize what it is. I knew the magnitude of who he was and what it was that I was doing along with my colleagues. But one thing that I would say is that I love the fact that he was very stern, he was firm, he was no nonsense, he was about the business. This man went through a lot to get to where he was, and each and every day was a gift, and he knew that what he was doing, he was speaking in our names as a race, as a people. if you don't take back your narrative and story, someone else will. He wasn't allowing mainstream media to tell us who we are. He took back that power, and that is what he did, and that's something that stood out to me, continues to live within me as well.
Did you feel like going to work was like a master class?
Going to work was like a master class, and I liken his Johnson Publishing Company to the university. Mr. Johnson was the professor, and his textbooks, Ebony, Jet Magazine, all of those publications, people learned and were educated from those magazines.
Yeah, and you got to interview some of the top celebrities in the world. I'm going to ask you about a few celebrities. You got to give us a quick story.
Okay.
Alicia Keys.
I did Alicia Keys' first Jet Magazine cover story for Songs in A Minor, her debut album. And when she saw me, she thanked me and she said that was the first story that someone had written about me and everything in it was correct.
Isn't that something? And now look at her.
Yeah.
Yes.
Janet
Wow.
Jackson.
Janet Jackson, I did a cover story when she turned 40. And she was so thankful for it. She was so wonderful to speak with. She liked me so much that at the end of the year, I got a Christmas card from her. And it wasn't from the record company. It was a personal Christmas card. And I still have it to this day.
Oh, very nice.
Okay, now what about Jay-Z?
Jay-Z, oh my goodness, we go back when I was just starting out in St. Louis. His very first song was with a group called Original Flavor. The song was Can I Get Open? And he was called MC Jay-Z. So I followed that career, but he visited Johnson Publishing Company and he pulled up in his tour bus. He stepped out into the 820 South Michigan building and he shook hands, took pictures. He didn't want anything in return. He was one of the few people who came by and did not want a cover story.
Wow.
But that was the thing. A lot of celebrities came through those
Everyone
doors.
who was anyone came by.
Yeah.
The greats. When we were talking A-listers, we're talking from politics, we're talking movies, music. It ran the gamut. Superstars,
Right, looking at
icons,
Magic Johnson
legends,
right there.
everyone.
Yep.
Yes.
Now, what are you doing now?
I'm actually, I've been commissioned by Oxford University Press to work on a couple new essays. This month, you're going to see an essay with John H. Johnson and his wife, Eunice W. Johnson. And I've been commissioned to also do essays for Lerone Bennett Jr., Tupac Shakur, Notorious B.I.G., and Bo Diddley.
Wow.
You are going to be busy.
Yes. Empire, the house that John H. Johnson built, is available on Amazon. Check it out. And on Monday, September 23rd, Margena is going to be hosting a book discussion at the Harold Washington Library.
Yeah, put
All
it
the
on your
best to you.
calendar.
Okay.